We do want to bring in Senator Glenneda Zuiderveld out of the Magic Valley, District 24, to talk about what we talked about earlier, which is these two possibly competing joint memorials. Senator Zuiderveld, we played a clip from you yesterday where you rose for a second time to debate and address the point about the line about amnesty. And if we're not granting amnesty, then what are we going to do with the supposedly 30,000 guest workers, if you want to call them that are here now already? But one of the big questions is, well, I'll get to that in a second. Can you just kind of address and set up where we are with this Senate Joint Memorial and your opposition vote to it? Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Matt. And hello, everybody. I will. Yesterday was quite an interesting day. And, it's interesting where they're always talking about it's just a memorial. And if it was just a memorial, we wouldn't have had the Idaho Dairymen's Association, IACI, Farm Bureau, University of Idaho come the day before to do a press release. And then on the memorial, there's two of them. There's this one that they brought out, but we actually had a memorial that we had brought out first. And it was going through the House side through State Affairs. And it's pretty firm in what it's talking about. We want to keep our administrator, Biden, accountable for his failed attempts to hold our border and protect our border. So ours is pretty strong language there. It's talking about, the fact that the sex trafficking, the human trafficking, the drugs. And so we're stating that all in our whereases. And then we're actually stating that, we're actually going to be about protecting our borders. And then we'll worry about our labor issue. And basically the SJM 102, it was basically they're wanting to protect the workforce over our borders. And that was basically a lot of my debate on that. And, and they kept on bringing up the line on page 2 where it said, not granting amnesty to those currently in the United States without legal status. And so in the press release, we had learned that there's 35,000 undocumented guest workers, whatever the language they're wanting. Oh, they call it I can't remember. I can't find it anywhere, but they have a new name for them. So it's not illegal workers. They don't want to call them that. And so there's undocumented. Has Senator Carlson here.
Good teammates.
That's right. And so they were talking about 35,000 undocumented workers. But then they're not going to grant amnesty. So what are they going to do with those 35,000 workers? That was going to be my question to Senator Guthrie, which he declined my question on that. And so that's basically what happened on the floor yesterday with that. And then an interesting thing, the Idaho Dairymen's Association actually came out with a bill analysis and summary on our House Joint Memorial 8, and they're in opposition of it. So to me, that's proof that they're not really about protecting our borders. They're more about protecting the workforce. Because these two, when I was talking to people about both memorials, they said, why can't we vote for both of them? I says, well, you can, but there's a good chance that when you vote for the Senate Joint Memorial, that the House Joint will not get over here and you won't get the opportunity to vote for it. And so then today they came out with the memorial, and I'll just read a piece. It says, we oppose this memorial as printed because of, one, its language suggesting Idaho businesses fuel the immigration crisis by a thirst of cheap immigrant labor, and two, it suggests that border security cannot be accomplished while also accomplishing long needed guest worker visa reform to meet the needs of year-round agriculture. And to me, that just basically confirmed what I've been saying, that they can't have their cake and eat it too.
Exactly.
And the problem is this is a Trojan horse for a lot of your trafficking, like I said. And, with the cartel coming in, we actually in Twin Falls about a month ago had the cartel come in and killed 2 men and then went back to Mexico in Twin Falls. And so this is a huge issue, and we just can't do both. Either we're protecting our border or not, And the other thing is this is lawlessness to me. We've been turning a blind eye to it, and they have breaking, the law. We have a law that they have to hire them legally. They should be coming here legally. And because we are all of a sudden desperate for a workforce, now we want to just turn a blind eye and give them this amnesty. And so basically, what are we going to do next? The next person that breaks the law, are we going to turn a blind eye to that? We're just watering this all down. And so that's kind of where this is all at. I don't know if we will get the House Joint Memorial 8 heard in state affairs on the House side because of all of this drama that's going on with both of them. But I've been told numerous times over and over, we should be able to vote for both of them. They can both coexist. Well, we'll see if they'll coexist.
Yeah, and that was my question to Brian Allman on here, if he thought that these two things could exist. I mean, they're just statements, they're just memorials, and it sounds like one is more focused on guest worker, and the other one is focused on Idaho first and America first. I mean, you have language in the House Joint Memorial that talks about. It's almost like you can pinpoint when you read the memorials because they open very similarly. And then the neocon version goes off and says, they failed to uniformly immigration law, which has failed to provide us with a robust system for guest workers. And then the America First version says they failed to uniformly enforce immigration law, like ending the Remain in Mexico policy. And these are the things that we know were working. When President Trump left office, these were the things that were in place. I saw a dramatic decrease in entries across the border, a dramatic decrease in crime that was coming across the border. They like to say, there was also the lowest amount of deportations that were happening at the time. Well, that's because no one was coming in. So, I mean, all of these numbers, they're real. And so you have a America First memorial in the House, and you've got a neocon memorial in the Senate. And again, they're just statements, and I think they can coexist, and hopefully you can get a hearing in House State Affairs. When Dale Hawkins presented it in House State Affairs, that was just the RS hearing, or was that?
Yeah, that
hearing?
Was just to print it. So they just they voted, and they are able to print the bill. It still has not been heard in committee to be sent to the House floor. So we'll see what happens with that. It'll be very telling. And so part of my with all of this that I'm hoping that people will see, it really is more than just a memorial. They're trying to send a message of where a lot of your legislators are standing on the workforce and then the border. And so at the same time, I like to show people, here's where your representatives are standing on protecting the border over the workforce, and not saying that we're against the workforce, but we cannot continue to break the law because of that problem. And I brought up on the floor too that the H-2A program that they say will not work because it's seasonal. I've been doing research on that, and that's a year program. So they actually could have workers come for a year and then maybe have 2 different sets where they're just working through their workers if they wanted to use the H-2A program. It's not like it's a 8-month or a seasonal. On the paperwork I was reading, it's up to a year that they can be here. And so there is ways that they could use that if they wanted to. And then I also brought up, because they're also fighting, saying that, a lot of these illegal immigrants are paying taxes, and so they're not that big of a burden on our country. Well, through the FAIR report, which is Federation for American Immigration Reform, it talks about that it costs the federal and the state total $150.7 billion a year, and then that money that they're talking about that they pay taxes on illegally because they have false information, but the money that they're going ahead and pulling taxes from their check, it only is $35 billion. So we still have was that 120 some thousand dollars, or 120,000
billion.
120 billion. Thank you very much. I'm like, I'll get that number out. So that's still a burden. So even though that they're coming in and paying some taxes, that it still is a burden, and that equals $957 per taxpayer every year that we pay for this illegal immigration. Yeah. And so it's actually 1,156, but once they take that money that they pay in, the burden is $957 per taxpayer every year.
Senator, you had also mentioned in your debate that you personally you worked in either in a dairy farm or in some sort of agricultural you had employment in this area. Yeah. And you're an American. What are you doing a job that you normally don't want to do? I mean, I don't understand how that happened.
Because
what is that claim? What is that claim? Why does that claim exist?
And to me, it's insulting because I have worked for two of the largest dairies in my area, and we do hire a lot of citizens. But like I had shared on the floor, part of the problem that is hard for them to stay in there is they don't speak Spanish, and so there's a language barrier. And then the other thing I didn't really mention is there's pressure put on the American citizens, to the point where they quit because they want to get work for their family that's coming over here. And so there's a lot of that going on as well. And but it's not just that they don't want to do the work, and I always say, maybe people are not leaving the job, maybe they're leaving their bosses, because a lot of times people don't really leave the work, they leave the boss. And so, but they're always insulted, and, because we're talking about the cheap labor, but I'm kind of insulted that they keep on saying that, Americans don't want these jobs.
Right. And one of the reasons might be because we keep dangling free money to stay out of these jobs and go keep going to school, keep staying in school, go learn a trade, go work for my donor's big company. I mean, that's I mean, when you're giving able-bodied young people, we just talked about this, able-bodied young people coming out of high school a chance at $8,000 to just go study something so they can go work for some donor's company, then these young people are not doing what we had to do when we were younger, which is, hey, I wanted to be in the movie business. So what did I have to do? I waited tables and bartended on the, and did those jobs that are in demand, that people seem to not want to do anymore. But it's not because they want to do it. It's because they're getting free money. I mean, I feel like that's a huge component here when the government is just handing out free money to deter people from working.
Yeah. And, and again, a lot of that money, it benefits that industry and all these different industries, talking about the launch program. A lot of people in my district, and I think in everybody's district that has a JFAC member, I'll read this text real quick. It says, the Idaho Legislature is considering funding Idaho Launch this week, which gives every high school graduate an opportunity for an $8,000 grant for things like community college and skilled career training. This would match Idaho kids with Idaho jobs. Email representative, and then had my Miller on there because he's on JFAC, and tell them to support funding the launch program, paid for by Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry.
IACI's sending that.
They're sending that out to like a blast of texts.
Yeah.
And so that just goes again to show you that they're wanting to have your taxpayer dollars go towards hiring and training their labor.
Right.
When they actually could do it themselves. It's time for us to get back to free market and get government out of this stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I unfortunately, I feel like we could just talk about all day about this, but I want you to, you need to get back there and get to the fight. I thank you so much for joining us and giving us your perspective on this. We're going to share this stuff out there and make sure people understand it. But you have a great way of keeping people informed. Where can people follow you, and how can we keep in touch?
Okay. If they go to Glenneda.com, just my first name.com, and then that will give them all my links. But I also have a Substack. If you go to Vote for Glenneda, I think I have under that. And I do try to do a weekly update on things. I will be doing an update on what happened with the immigration, because, we really do need to protect our borders, because, the launch, or not the launch, but the immigration and the workforce with that, they're saying, we can't sustain the workforce if we lose them, but we can't sustain America if we don't start protecting our borders.
Yeah.
We'll have a bigger problem than workers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Senator Zuiderveld, thank you so much for joining us. We'll check back in with you again.
All right. Thank you so much.